From tuning up wireless charging to an insider's recommendation on whether these phones are even worth it, Apple's new iPhone 15 leaks will shock you. The first shocker is Apple tweaking its wireless charging power after all these years of sticking to their guns in typical Apple fashion. Since the iPhone 8 brought wireless charging to Apple smartphones, the company has limited its power to just 7.5 watts, though they did allow their MagSafe chargers to double that to 15 watts, making them a more appealing buy for iPhone users. Well, they're now extending an olive branch to charger manufacturers. Rumor has it that the iPhone 15 lineup will have the ability to charge at 15 watts with any old charger, as long as it's up to QI2 standard. This is good news for a lot of reasons, the biggest one being that you won't need a made-for-iPhone or MFI certified charger to get max power anymore. The QI2 standard is open, so iPhone 15 users should have many options to choose from when shopping for a charger, and they'll be able to find them at various prices. Not to mention that people might just have QI2 chargers lying at home, especially if they live with Android users. Now, this might be bad news for people who own any of the iPhones from the 12th series to the 14th, as they may have fallen for Apple's big MagSafe push and bought into the ecosystem. The fact that Apple is undercutting its own MagSafe charger is a bad sign for MagSafe as a whole. Speaking of charging though, the USB-C port is real, folks. Ever since the European Union ruled that Apple has to put Type-C ports on their phones, people have been looking forward to the change in the port, either in the iPhone 15 or 16, or at most, the 17. Mac rumors have recently gotten a look at retail dummies of the iPhone 15 lineup. And guess what? You won't have to wait that long to start enjoying USB-C on Apple phones. Although the company still has a closed garden around its devices and accessories, they've started opening the doors to the garden lately. But the Lightning port was one of the biggest sticking points that divided Apple's users from everyone else. Because of the Lightning port, iPhone users couldn't share cables with other smartphone owners, and that led to a lot of inconveniences in the daily lives of iPhone users. Also, with Apple pushing the iPhone as a serious camera for serious photographers and videographers, the data speeds of the Lightning port were almost useless, as they're stuck in the mid-2010s and can't handle 4K footage. With Type-C, you can look forward to faster charging, faster data transfer, and the ability to share cables with those who haven't bitten the apple yet. Keep in mind, though, that there are still rumors that Apple may restrict faster data transfer to the Pro phones, and even they could need MFI-certified cables. So what else can we figure out from these dummies? Let's take a look at that action button. That's right, there's a capacitive action button where the mute switch used to be. I'm sad to see the mute switch go because it was an iconic design feature of the original iPhone as an homage to the iPod's hold switch. This action button, on the other hand, is inspired by the Apple Watch Ultra, which had a similar button that users could program to do basically anything. It's a safe bet that the iPhone's action button will work the same way. Unlike the Watch Ultra though, the button on the iPhone isn't going to be a real button. It'll instead be a pressure-sensitive area that users can press as if it were a button, and the Taptic engine will make it click, just like the real deal. If you've used the last iPhones with home buttons or the trackpad of a MacBook, you'll know what to expect. I'll miss the mute switch, but it's hard to argue with the versatility of an action button. Folks who really want the mute functionality can just map it to the button, and those who'd rather do something else with it have the freedom to do just that. I will point out that the action button is only coming to the Pro models, at least as far as I can tell from the dummies. The next leak I'm going over is a bit underwhelming, and it has to do with the cameras. Remember all those rumors about an upgraded camera module with a periscope lens? Yeah, it turns out that those cameras are being saved for the 16 lineup, and the iPhone 15's Pro models will just reuse the camera from the 14 Pro Max. For the record, that's a state-of-the-art 48-megapixel main sensor, accompanied by an ultra-wide and a 2x telephoto lens, both rocking 12 megapixels. The main sensor will be packing Apple's patented sensor shift stabilization, and all cameras will benefit from the greatest software processing the company has cooked up. That's a bit of a bummer, and it doesn't help that unlike some older iPhone models, it's not like the 14 Pro Max camera had some quirks that would now come with the regular 15 Pro. This shouldn't be too disappointing though. because the 14 Pro's camera was Apple's biggest camera hardware jump in literally years, and it's still a top-notch camera. The base models will probably get bumped up to the base 14 models cameras, which means Apple will try to stick it out with their 12-megapixel sensor for one more year. It looks like Apple's focusing on a whole bunch of other things for the iPhone 15, but if you're looking to take your camera game to the next level, you might have to wait for another generation. The camera isn't the only thing the iPhone 15 will reuse, as the M12 display panels are also coming back. Again, this isn't a bad thing, because the Pro models of the iPhone 14 were rocking gorgeous OLED screens, with Apple's ProMotion providing a variable refresh rate of up to 120 Hz. Along with new and improved brightness levels that could stand up to the sunniest skies, there needs to be more improvement for Apple to make with the screens, aside from making them even bigger, and that, reportedly, is another thing they're saving for next time. This time around, the sizes will be the same as the 14 models, at 6.1 inches for the smaller ones and 6.7 inches for the big boys. I have some good news for folks who are eyeing the regular iPhone 15s, and that has to do with Dynamic Island. The Pro models of the iPhone 14 introduced the island, and as silly as the name is, it was a really creative use of the notch area, which Apple can't get rid of just yet because of Face ID. Where the Dynamic Island ran into trouble is that it was only available on the Pro phones, and those are a tiny percentage of iPhone users. So third-party app developers didn't see the point in designing features around the island. But Apple is bringing the island to the regular 15 models, which should benefit everyone that has it on their phones. I've saved the most shocking leak for last. You see, according to an insider, the iPhone 15 lineup isn't going to be a very tempting upgrade. Between stuff that's been leaked and things insiders are playing close to their chest, the iPhone 15 series isn't turning out to be a very exciting change. If anything, it's looking less exciting than the 14 lineups, which many Apple fans thought was boring, and it's a far cry from the changes that came with the 11th and 12th generations. The switch to USB-C is a historic change for the iPhone as a whole, and the Action button is one of the biggest changes that we know of, while the Dynamic Island is going to lend a unique character to the base iPhone 15s. But overall, Unknowns21 is warning folks that this isn't a worthwhile upgrade. It's clear that Apple has some really exciting ideas in the pipeline, but they're saving them for the iPhone 16. That doesn't mean that the iPhone 15 lineup will be a complete dud, of course, and there's a market for it. Folks that have really ancient iPhones, like the ones that were left behind by the move to iOS 16, might consider going for the latest and greatest offering from Apple. And their heads are gonna explode by how different things are. Owners of the 14, 13, or even 12 series might as well skip this cycle, especially if they don't plan to spring for the Pro models, since the base iPhone 15s is somehow even more boring. So, from an overall impression of whether the new phones will be worth it, to a bump in the wireless charging power of the lineup, these were the most shocking new leaks about the iPhone 15.